Hello everyone, Hamer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time we've got Season 5, Episode 15, which is called Catspaw. So we start out with Barney and his publisher brother Larry talking to the DA about corruption in the African American community, where a mob is in cahoots with the police. After Barney steps out, a car drives by and throws a Molotov cocktail into the office, and Larry sadly dies in Barney's arms. We have an apartment scene, and hey, Willie's back. Jim explains that the team has to establish a link between Police Captain Abbott and mob boss George Corley in order to bring Larry's killers to justice. The IMF stage a fight in which Barney rescues Corley's secretary Millie Webster from a mugger, and she takes him to the office to get bandaged up. Paris and Dana, meanwhile, join a seance where Corley's accountant Goslin is present, in an effort to contact his recently deceased wife. Dana calls out to Goslin using some of his wife's mannerisms, warning him about his associates and that he has to get away from them. Goslin asks Dana to have a private sitting to understand more thoroughly, and she agrees. Barney tells Millie his name is Cliff Morgan, and they meet up with Corley's muscle man Pod Hamp, who is suspicious about Barney's alleged rescue. It seems a little too convenient for him. Tells Barney to get lost. Barney is able to get Hamp's gun away from him, but Corley enters the room and tells them both to knock it off. Corley seems impressed that Barney, as Cliff, is able to handle himself, gives him a little bit of cash, and sends him on his way, calling Abbott to look into Cliff's record. Meanwhile, Jim is meeting with the captain, asking him to allow his group to come in and replace Corley's, prepared to hand over some cash. But the captain doesn't want to have a race war on his turf. Willie climbs up on the outside of the building and sneaks into a window, setting up some stuff and cracking the safe, putting in some extra cash, then hiding in Hamp's closet as he comes up to his nearby room, only able to get out after Hamp falls asleep. Barney comes over to Millie's place for the evening, and they tell each other that they both know what's going on with each other. Barney has a checkered past. Corley's operation is a racket masquerading as an insurance company. Millie says Corley wants a new accountant because he doesn't trust Goslin, who's from the old organization. Barney agrees to come on board. The first order of business is asking Goslin why there's $10,000 more in the safe than was expected. Goslin is visibly upset at all of the suspicious eyes on him. Barney and Millie continue to get close, and Millie says Corley's ready to dump Goslin and take Barney on full-time. Hamp calls and tells Barney to stay away from Millie or he'll be dead. At the next seance, Dana warns Goslin, as his wife Claire, again that he's in trouble, and Corley plans to replace him, which Goslin now knows to be true. Goslin says he'll quit, but Dana says he won't just be cut loose. He knows too much. She advises him to take information to protect himself, and Goslin dashes off. Paris alerts Jim, who sets off a canister of anesthetic gas in Hamp's room, which was placed there earlier by Willie. Jim and Willie watch Goslin arrive at the office, where he finds Hamp asleep, so he goes into the safe, grabs some documents, and prints out some coded reports. When he leaves, Jim forces him into their waiting car. They take him into a warehouse, telling him that they're cops and demanding answers from him so that they can round up the bad guys for Larry's murder. Goslin says he only knows about the books, but eventually Jim forces him to talk. Jim confronts Captain Abbott about the fact that he's learned about a Swiss account that Corley regularly makes deposits to. From Abbott's reaction, it's clear that that's his money, and Jim tells him to be at a phone booth at 10:30 along with Hamp. Jim tells the two that it's time for them to realize who's got the upper hand, and they agree to cooperate with Jim's group. Jim tells Hamp to take Corley out in exchange for being in charge of the territory, and he agrees, with Abbott saying he'll get Corley to the office so that it can go down tonight. Abbott calls Millie, who's apparently working for him, and tells him to get Corley and Barney to the office, as Goslin has apparently agreed to a deal with the DA. That's his excuse. The two arrive at the office, wondering where Hamp is. He shows up shortly with a sawed-off shotgun, telling them about the new arrangements. Jim and Paris are waiting outside and are surprised to see Millie dash in. She tells Hamp that Abbott wants Barney to be spared, but Hamp says it's obvious that she just wants to protect her new boyfriend, and shoves her over with Barney and Corley. Before Hamp can shoot, Willie takes him out with a tranquilizer gun and tells Corley to leave before the cops arrive. Before he does, Corley confronts Millie about being Abbott's spy and, to top it off, trying to protect Barney instead of him. As Corley leaves the building, Jim picks him up as a cop again and says they're going to Abbott's precinct. And then the DA, but given the circumstances that Abbott is obviously not happy with him, Corley begs him, let's go to the DA first. Jim is only too happy to oblige. Millie tells Barney that she wants to get away with him, go away with him. But Barney tells her that Abbott's confessing to the DA as well, and tells her who he really is. Millie understands his quest for revenge and realizes she's been set up. Barney says he'll do what he can for her, and she angrily tells him through her tears to drop dead as he walks away. The DA has the evidence he needs, and the IMF drive away. Mission accomplished, such as it was. I'm going to give this episode a grade of a C-. Starting with the good. Certainly the MVP of this episode is Abby Lincoln as Millie. She's great as an actress. I'll talk a little bit about the character a little later, but definitely her portrayal of this is what drives the episode, and she does a fantastic job. Just as a comment, it's a topic that may be a little bit difficult to talk about, but I'm a little bit torn. I'm both happy and sad that the show at this time in 1970, it was aired in 1971, but I'm sure it was shot in 1970, found a way to feature African-American actors in decent quality roles. It wasn't easy at that time. You could argue that, even 50 years later, things haven't changed so much. But, kudos to the producers and the executives of the show for, and it's unfortunate to say it, but yeah, because these are obviously very, very good actors, and Abby Lincoln and Hari Rhodes, who's been in a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm glad that they got opportunities here. I don't even really know how else to say it. Certainly they deserve it on their merit and their abilities, and yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Also good. I liked that, Willie is back, and not just kind of in an ancillary role. Because of the nature of this plot, Willie gets to do a lot of the work that Barney would normally do. He's the one who has to do some climbing and sneaking around and putting some gadgetry in some places and that sort of thing. And that's pretty refreshing. They got good use out of Peter Lupus in this one. I also like how there is, some smatterings of discussion here and there about, the nature of the mobs. There's talk about how it used to be a white mob, now it's a black mob, whatever. But it comes down to, how the poor are preyed on. And, people of all colors, right, do it. And exploitation of people who are weak and needy and poor, unfortunately, takes place at all levels by all sorts of people. I like the way that it's mentioned, it's addressed head on, and not to the point, though, where it gets really malicious. I've mentioned it a couple of times where it could kind of go in that direction, but it doesn't. And it's treated, I think, in a way that makes sense. So to move on from that, what I didn't like about this is the episode is a little bit of a slow mover for me. The action isn't quite as lively as I would like. Maybe that's kind of out of necessity because of the nature of the plot. I don't know. One thing that is definitely not good is that this is not really there's not a high degree of difficulty to this mission. The IMF is dealing with really, greedy characters who are quite lame. Their motivations are very, very obvious. It's all about money, and in some cases sort of about power, but it's really money in the end. So, manipulating these characters and antagonists is not really that difficult. So it's not really, a high-quality mission in the traditional sense. The seance stuff, oh my gosh, yeah. Not that it's bad in and of itself. I understand why they did it. It was kind of necessary. It's fine. They didn't spend a whole heck of a lot of time on it. But darn it if I didn't get those vibes from back in Season 1 and Zubrovnik's Ghost, where we had that seance. those seances, I should say. There was more than one. Okay, let's move on and put that aside. Moving on to kind of a point-counterpoint. Millie Webster in this one is another incidental character. We've had a few of those this season, and I've discussed them at length. This is a bit of a tough one for me, because I prefer the incidental characters, as I've mentioned, who we can really root for. Those that don't really have their own agendas. They're not players in the game, so to speak. They're just kind of caught in the game. Eve Zembra from Squeeze Play is a good example. Gabby from Hunted was a good example as well. And Millie Webster is not really that kind of character. You know, I guess the best way that I can put it is, she's not enough like Tatanisha in Hunted, Abby Lincoln as the actress. Or I shouldn't really talk about the actresses. The actresses are fine, they're great, but the characters. Millie Webster is not like Gabby in Hunted so much as she is like Nicole Vedette in Nicole from season 3. She's got all of these conflicted loyalties, so to speak. She's obviously got something going on with Pod Hamp, even though she kind of denies it or downplays it. She's obviously got, loyalty to Corley, her employer, and she's obviously a spy for Captain Abbott. And that one at the end, that kind of twist at the end, I thought that was a little bit overkill from the character standpoint. From the plot standpoint, I understand it. But for Abby, when we're talking about her as a character that we were supposed to feel some kind of pity for, to root for, or something like that, I think that that could be possible had it not been for that thing at the end where she's really a spy for Abbott. To me, that kind of puts her over the edge. Had that not happened, that final scene, where and this is a fantastic acting by Abby Lincoln, where she just basically tells Barney, drop dead, as he walks away, which is basically an ad-libbed line, and they threw it in because it worked so well, from what I read in the Mission Impossible dossier. I would have felt a lot more, I would have felt a lot better about Millie as a character. I would have felt sorry for her. I would have pitied her a little bit more and felt a little bit better about her had it not turned out that she was playing her own game and being a spy for Captain Abbott at the same time. That revelation, again, like I said, while necessary to the plot, from the characterization standpoint, I feel that it removes any vestige that's possible of feeling sorry for her. She comes off rather hypocritical of, accusing Barney of saying, oh, you just played me. Come on, you've been playing everybody, right? So, spare me the crocodile tears in a sense. I am sure that, the tears of the character were legitimate because she obviously had feelings for Barney, but they do ring somewhat hollow, given that she's equally a player, and in some cases more so a player, in, this whole escapade. I guess, in her own mind, she felt that, she was prepared to save Barney, and she was and she was willing to give it all up for him, that kind of justifies her actions in her own mind. Okay, I can understand how the character might feel that way. People do go through, we all do this, go through those kind of mental gymnastics to kind of rationalize and justify our own actions. But again, I just feel that it kind of doesn't work. And I guess I'll leave it at that. So, as that kind of incidental character, Millie Webster isn't quite up there with a couple of the other ones that I mentioned. Just as a final note, something that I've noted over the last few episodes, it just seems, I don't know, well, this is a point that I'm trying to make, and this is what I'm trying to figure out, because I don't know. The plots have seemed to be very clearly structured to put Paris and Dana together. If you recall, in Takeover, they were together. She was, supposedly the mayor's daughter, and Paris is the guy who brings them together. In the one before that, the hostage, there's that scene where Paris and Dana are both standing together in adjacent prison cells, and they're like, hello, that sort of thing. Even if you go back towards the beginning of the season in Flipside, that's one that I recall, where Dana was a singer and Paris was Frankie, her guitarist, and it just seems like they're kind of being pushed together in a sense. I wonder whether that's the case. I wonder whether that's deliberate or just kind of coincidental. The reason I say that is because, and I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody, but this is the last season for both of them. Actually, it's Dana's only season. Leslie Warren does not come back to the show for season 6. Leonard Nimoy also leaves after this season. I've already mentioned that he's already kind of mentally checked out at this point. And again, that's what makes me kind of curious. Was it kind of deliberate? And did the producers kind of see it, or did they have a feeling and say, well, let's just keep those two together? Or was that, them kind of, being together in scenes and acting together and probably rehearsing a little bit together, spending time together, whatever it was, is that what kind of caused them to say, you know what, this isn't really going anywhere? Be kind of interested to know. Obviously, there's probably no way to know at this point. I mean, unless Leslie Warren wants to tell us in an interview or something like that. I have no idea whether she's even inclined to talk about her time on Mission Impossible anymore. Leonard Nimoy, unfortunately, is no longer with us, so that we will never be able to know. Anyway, just a curious thing, and I'm interested to see how this plays out in the remaining handful of episodes. Let's watch and see if Paris and Dana are kind of put together in the same way, and see how that shakes out. I think it will be interesting. Anyway, I think that's what I have to say about that. Thank you as always for watching. Please like this episode review. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please leave your comments. Love to hear what you have to say. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.